This video will be big because it's going to be going over the class known as Warlocks in Destiny 2. They are the arcane casters of the universe, able to use their massive brains to use the light and dark to do cool stuff like giant explosions, create wells of light, and just do some fun stuff and, make the game a point-and-click adventure game. Now, if you're new to the game or just unversed to playing Warlock, which is probably 2/3 of the player base, which are either dumb hunters like me, who haven't figured out how to disable their brain, and the Giga Chad Titans, who have figured out the way to separate their brain from their bodies and learn the ultimate technique of punch fast, punch really hard, and punch with the ultimate style called Crayola. Anyways, Warlocks are the ones who use their brain to do even dumber stuff than both classes, combined like eating grenades and knowing that Oryx is not even in the room. I will be talking about these various techniques that the Warlock uses, starting subclasses in a more general perspective of what they do. Then I will be talking about each subclass individually on a more detailed scale. Then after that, I will explain how to be effective as a Warlock solo and as a team. I'm not crazy at the game, I'm not esoteric. Salute to him because he's actually cracked at the game, but more general on how to survive in a solo or team. Then talk about stats and armor for Warlocks and give a handful of tips somewhere in the middle to get good. To clarify how to be effective as a Warlock is more how to use your abilities the best, while tips will be more about general gameplay stuff, like what glide you should use. Now, before we get into it, if Warframe and Destiny 2 guide videos made to help new players and cover new content is cool, then hit that subscribe button. Literally free. Little message, we're at 90 subs, which is 10 subs away from the mighty number 100. If you think a mighty is climbing the tallest hill in Florida. But you gotta start somewhere. But the main thing is, when we hit 100 subs, which I want us to hit around the end of the year, around December, then I'll release a montage or just a fun video using Jotun. I don't know, I think I want to do a montage more because it sounds cool and get all that stuff done, but let's get into it. First, starting off with the subclasses. Each subclass has their unique abilities, but the jumps and rifts stay the same. Two rifts are Healing Rift and Empowering Rift. The Healing Rift heals you and your teammates. The Empowering Rift makes your weapons do more damage. Jumps that you have are Burst Glide, Balance Glide, and Strafe Glide. Burst gives a ton of speed. Balance gives moderate speed and directional control, while Strafe Glide gives more directional control. Now I'm going to talk about the subclasses and what they do. Like, for example, is the subclass an ad clear or support? Is it like a PvP subclass? So we're going to start up with Stormcaller, which is more of an ad clear and boss damage class. Wait, do people use Chaos Reach for DPS? Like, do they? It isn't half bad in PvP too, so have fun with that. Stormcaller specializes in calling the storm down your enemies with Chaos Reach, a Kamehameha, and becoming Lieutenant, or Storm Trance. Chaos Reach is good for ad clear and boss damage if the boss is not these. And Storm Trance is great for ad clear, and both are really good for PvP. Second, Dawnblade is more of an ad clear and support. Super Daybreak is great for PvP and ad clear. You literally just become an AC 130 from COD. The other super, Will of Radiance, is a great support super and is more of a meme in Crucible, as, it's not like a Titan bubble where you just walk in and you die, but it's kind of funny when you place it down and just see that people can't kill you. Unless they're smart and destroy the sword in the ground, but that's besides the point. The next subclass is Voidwalker, which is really good in PvP. Isn't half bad at being ad clear too, and good for boss damage. The two types of Nova Bomb are Slova and Vortex, which are great for delaying some ads and dealing heavy amounts of damage to bosses. In PvP, Slova Bomb or Cataclysm. In PvP, Slova Bomb or the Cataclysm Nova Bomb is more effective, but either or is fine, I would say. It's a big explosion. We all love big explosions. The third super is Nova Warp, which is like a spammable Nova Bomb that you can also charge up. It's a roaming super and you can teleport, so you can do the nothing personal kit. Finally, Stasis, an ad clear class, and is great for PvP. If you were about, a year ago now, maybe 2, I want to show you this cool point-and-click adventure game I've been playing recently. While you're watching that, I was just reminded that was the wrong footage, but I just couldn't tell. Okay, anyways, roasting Shade Binder out of the way, I'm going to go into the details of these subclasses. Now, I'm going to the nitty-gritty details with the subclasses. Starting reversed, we have Stasis, which the basis for all subclasses as they use the new systems with the aspects and fragments. Now, I won't go crazy in depth when it comes to fragments and stats and what's the best. What I go over is grenades, the supers, melees, aspects, and the systems. Now, I'm going out of order to, start with the systems. So, stasis works in 3 words: slow, freeze, and shatter. Slow is obvious as it slows your enemies. Freeze completely freezes them in place for like a few seconds. Then the time frozen, you can shatter the enemies, which is when a certain amount of damage is met, an explosion happens. Not really explosion happens. You get the point, which causes shatter damage, most likely killing the enemy. Shatter can also be done through stasis crystals like stasis wall grenade, which you can shatter to do shatter damage. Now, systems out of the way, I'll be going on with the grenades. The glacier grenade is up first, and what it does is make a wall of stasis crystals, which you can shatter, like I said earlier. If an enemy's in this wall, they are frozen, and that's that grenade basically. The next grenade is the dusk field, which I misspelled in the script as duck field grenade. That's funny. And what it does is make a field of stasis that slows enemies, and if the enemies have enough slow debuff, they will freeze. Now, the final grenade is the cold snap grenade. This one is a grenade that tracks to an enemy, and when it hits them, they freeze, allowing them to be shattered. Next is melee, but unlike the other subclasses, stasis only has 1 melee. It's called Penumbral Blast, and it shoots a ball at your enemy, and when they are hit, they are frozen. Now, it is time to talk about Stasis Warlock Super, Winter's Wrath. When you click, you fire out Penumbral Blast like your melee that frees enemies, but when you right click, you fire out a pulse that shatters crystals and enemies. This super is very good for ad clears. You can, freeze a lot of enemies and then just right click to shatter all of them. Also, I say right click. It depends on what you're playing on. I say right click because I'm playing on PC. This super is so easy, you can make the game from an FPS to a point and click adventure game. In Crucible, even though I kind of joke around about this, and even though Stasis got nerfed a few times, I gotta say, still Stasis Warlock is you could just point at an enemy. I gotta say, this joke I make about Shadebinder is honestly kind of irrelevant since Stasis got nerfed multiple times. Now, the aspects. First up, we got Ice Flare Bolts, which is when an enemy is shattered, it spawns Seekers that track and freeze their targets. Next is Bleak Watcher, which when you hold your grenade key and throw it, it becomes a stasis turret that slows enemies and can freeze them. The other one we have is Frost Pulse, which when you cast your Rift, it creates a pulse that freezes enemies. The final one is Glacial Harvest. Glacial Harvest makes when you freeze targets, they create stasis crystals, which can be used in many builds in the fragments, like this one fragment that gives you overshield for collecting stasis crystals. Now, fragments, as I won't be talking about them, I'll explain how to get them. Now, to get them, you have 2 quests you can grab per week, and there are 3 options. Hopefully that made sense. A quest for Gambit, a quest for Strikes, or a quest for Crucible. Your choice for what you want. After completing them, you get a little thing, and using this thing, you can go to Exo Strain to get a fragment of what you want. Also, note for aspects, you need to do the quest for them, and grenades, you still need to also do the stasis quest. It will make you want to break your desk since it takes like forever. Looks cool, stasis is cool enough, but what if you want something easier to obtain? Well, we have the light subclasses, starting with Void, the Void Walkers. Void has the debuffs of Weaken, Suppress, and Volatile. Now, most people should know how Void works since it's been out since, okay, I don't know the time, but it's been out for a few months, so hopefully most people should know. But to remind, Weaken equal make that dude weak, Suppress no super and no abilities, and Volatile is more void damage. Buffs are Overshield, Devour, and Invis. The only one not obvious is Devour, but what it does is when you kill enemies, you gain health back. Just in case for people who don't know, Overshield is a shield over your shield, and Invis is invisibility. Now, grenades, which there are a lot of. To make it quick, Scatter Bomb splits off into mini grenades and cover a large area of multiple explosives. Void Spike is a grenade that can attach to surfaces and emits a beam of void that cones. I promise you that makes sense, that the gameplay should show what it does. Next is the Suppressor Grenade. It, suppresses your enemies. It's kind of like just a regular frag grenade and just suppresses. Vortex Grenade pulls in enemies and continually damages them over time. Magnetic Grenades are your stickies and explode twice. And Axiom Bolts, which if enemies are close enough, they'll have tracking projectiles follow them until it hits the enemy. Now, our final grenade is the Void Wall. Now, Void Warlocks have 1 melee, Pocket Singularity, which is similar to the Stasis Penumbral Blast, and when it hits enemies, it makes them volatile. So now, we are on to the aspects, starting with the Child of Old Gods. What it does is when you cast your Rift, you get a Void Soul. When you do damage to an enemy, it it'll start weakening them, and if you are running Healing Rift, you get Grenade and melee energy. So a good reason to run that. But if you're running Empowering Rift, it heals you. So also a good reason to run Empowering Rift. If an enemy is killed when it gets drained, you get class energy back. Next, we have Feed the Void. This aspect gives you Devour when you get a kill with the Void ability, and when you get kills with Devour, it heals you and extends your Devour's duration. Final aspect is Chaos Accelerant, which has an effect for these grenades, and uses this function, you have to hold your grenade. To use this function, you have to hold your grenade key. Vortex grenades increases in size and lingers for a longer time. Acid bolts create another seeker. Scatter grenades has submissions that track nearby enemies, and magnetic grenades do a short range void explosion. If you're familiar with the term handheld supernova, if you played when the void was in its trees, then this is where that has gone. Now Super's Nova Bomb, Cataclysm, or Slow Bomb, depending on what you call it, it's a slow Nova Bomb that tracks your enemies, and when it explodes, it fires small tracking projectiles, and even if those hit an enemy, it's an insta-kill. Nova Bomb Vortex is a Nova Bomb that, when it lands, it pulls enemies in and continually damages them. Now, if you don't have some stuff immediately for the light subclasses, now you won't have some stuff immediately for the light subclasses. If you need stuff, then go to Ikora and choose what element you want your other stuff. After buying it with Glimmer, you meditate at this lamp thing, and you can have your new abilities. If you don't know where Ikora is on the map, then just mark her on the tower, or just follow what I'm doing in this gameplay. Now, while that's going on, now before we get into Solar, if this video has been helpful so far, I really suggest you hit that subscribe button for more Warframe and Destiny 2 guide videos made to help new players and cover new content. Also, while you are, here, hit that like button just to tell YouTube that my video is cool and algorithm stuff. You know what? Let's just go into the Solar Club class. Let's just go into Solar subclasses for Warlocks. Now, Solar or Dawnblade. Solar has the debuffs of Scorch and Ignition. Scorch burns the enemy and it damage increases as Scorch debuffs increase. Then, Ignition is when Scorch stacks are put up, and when Ignition happens, the enemies explode. Buffs are Restoration, Radiant, and Cure. Restoration regenerates health and shields and cannot be interrupted by damage. Radiant increases your weapon damage, and Cure heals you. Now melees, you have Incinerator Snap. You snap and you shoot out some sparks that explode. Celestial Fire sends out a spiral of 3 explosive solar blasts that scorch the target with each hit. Now, which to choose, honestly, it's your choice, but the snap looks cooler and has a shorter cooldown by 10 seconds. First up, Solar Grenade, similar to the Vortex Grenade from Void, but does scorch stacks to enemies. Trip Mine is a laser mine that when enemy trips it, the grenade explodes. Thermite Grenade sends a wall of energy that deals damage comparable to the Void Wall Grenade. Incendiary Grenade is a frag grenade, like just a regular frag. Swarm Grenade is a grenade that releases little seekers that when enemies pass by, they'll start swarming the enemies. Fusion Grenades are another sticky grenade that moderately scorches the enemies, but unlike the magnetic grenades, it does not explode twice. Firebolt Grenade is an Axion Dart, basically, but solar. Finally, Healing Grenades, which used to be a Warlock exclusive ability, but are now every Solar class. What they do is heal and give regeneration and cure buffs. And speaking of heat rises, that is our first aspect. Holding down your grenade eats it and releases a healing burst that, if you're using a healing grenade, is stronger, and when you kill enemies, heat rises, duration increases, and grants melee energy. One aspect that combines with heat rises is Icarus Dash, which you can press X or whatever button it says to dodge while airborne. While heat rises is active, you gain 2 Icarus dodges, and while airborne defeating enemies, fewer. Finally, Touch of Flame, which gives each grenade enhanced functions. Healing grenades improve restoration cure. Solar grenades linger for a longer time. Fireballs increased radius and higher maximum number of targets. And fusions explode twice. Now supers, we have Daybreak, in which you become an enemy AC-130 gunship that unleashes hell on the enemies. And Well of Radiance, or the super that if you aren't using to an LFG team, you're useless. Now we're on our final light subclass for Warlocks, Stormcallers. I just want to say this now. The more I get into this video, the longer it gets, and I don't really want that to happen, but I'm too far gone. Not even Spider-Man could save me. So there's a dice roll chance that this video is like 30 minutes in editing. I'll probably figure it out. Anyways, Arc. Arc mechanics are amplified, a buff which increases speed, weapon handling, and after a short time you get a speed boost. To become amplified, you need to rapidly kill enemies with Arc. To explain it a bit more, kill all the enemies as fast as you can to be while amplified. If you're sprinting after a certain amount of time, you get a speed boost. For debuffs, you have Blind, which is obvious, it blinds the enemy. Also, Ionic Traces grant ability energy when picked up and look like a little energy that seeks you. So if you see these, then you know. Okay, now Jolt is when an enemy has a Jolt on them, which comes from abilities, and anything that says it jolts enemies. Now what it does is when more arc damage is taken, the enemy has Chain Lightning come out of them and hurts enemies around them. Now our aspects, first up, Arc Soul, which when you cast your Rift, you have a little orb that shoots at enemies. If amplified, it will shoot faster. Lightning Surge is another melee attack that when you slide, you call down lightning strikes, and here's some gameplay of it. Really cool. I would say it's my favorite melee. Insert the I'm the storm that is approaching joke here. Next is Electrostatic Mind, which is probably our brains on Destiny 2. What it does is getting kills with your arc abilities, jolted kills or blinded kills, creates Ionic Traces. Next part is collecting Ionic Traces that give you amplified grenades, starting with storm grenades, which has a little storm, kills the enemy. We have lightning grenades, like the kind of the void cone grenade that has that cone around it, except with lightning. Flashbang. Pulse grenade is a grenade that damages enemies with an explosion radius. Skip grenades, like arc swarm grenades. Fusions are stickies, and arc bolt makes a chain of lightning to nearby enemies. Now we have the melees, starting from chain lightning, which jolts the enemies, and when amplified, creates more chains. Ball of lightning creates a projectile of lightning that releases a lightning strike after a short time, and when amplified, it releases additional lightning before detonating. Now we have our supers. Storm Trance. This super is basically becoming Emperor Palpatine, and what they did for Arc 3.0 was combined both landfall and blink, so you can cast into the ground, and pressing shift on PC will let you blink. To go more detailed, lightning comes out of your hands. When you hit enemies, it chains them. So the super is basically is good for ad clear and PvP, but bosses, not good. And the super is really good, and midway through the super, you can deactivate it. Now it's time to talk about being effective as a Warlock. So this next part is how to be effective as a Warlock in solo and on teams. This won't be going into individual subclasses, but we'll give some recommendations specific to some subclasses. First of all, solo. While solo, the game is definitely way more difficult for Warlocks, as you're not the mobile hunters that have the best jump in the game. Totally not biased. Being serious though, the Warlock jump is, gotta say, the worst than sipping garbage out of a rusty can. And Warlocks don't have these smoke grenades, making it harder to evade enemies. You're also without a team, so if 50 Thrall swarm you, you have to kill those 50 Thrall. For your abilities, an obvious tip is just to not waste your abilities, so if don't miss that grenade. With your melee, you want to try to use them. You want to try to use them to your best, because the ad clear that the melees have are just great. Like Warlocks just have some insane ad clear for their melees, and stasis is literally a subclass about ad clear. And an example we have is Lightning Surge. It can just easily take out a horde of Thrall, as it has a decent area where it strikes. Another one is the Void Melee, which makes the enemies volatile, which, you know, the explosion happens. That 50 Thrall is now 5. Now rifts, when going against 50 Thrall, do not place your rift. You find a platform that is safe, that you can place it, but you have a second of you standing still, which in that time you can get melted. If you're placing rifts down when it's safe, I suggest using Arc Soul or Child of the Old Gods. While I believe Child of the Old Gods are better since it has an area that damages the enemies that are around the Void Soul. If we're playing Arc Soul, then Arc Soul just the trick, and it does pretty well in it. Amplified, it shoots faster. If you have to choose Arc or Void when it comes to those souls, flip a coin. My suggestions for supers are Nova Bomb, as it's a one button press and instant damage. So is Chaos Reach. And if you don't want to die to bosses, use Well. Basically every single subclass in this game and super is good now, since, you know, all the 3.0 updates. Stasis might be a little bit behind, to be honest, but if he gets buffs again, that'd be nice. Now, besides that, in team situations, it's basically the same thing, except you have a team supporting you. Grenades and melee is the same situation, but you have a team helping, so that horde of Thrall will definitely be easier to fight. Then Rift, the same thing again, but you'll be positioned well. Supers are pretty much the same, except you could definitely get away with a roaming super to help with ad clear. And the roaming supers are definitely good for ad clear. Like, they're not good for boss damage, but they're definitely good for ad clear. As a Warlock, playing solo and teams is pretty much the same, as you're trying to not let everyone die in your team, even if it's just you and you don't have any fancy invis like Hunters, or the ability to just not die like Titans. This is the part I'll go into tips. I have 5 tips for generally playing Warlocks. Use your grenades. They are your best friend. You have a few grenade-based aspects, so use those, I do suggest. Number 2, melees are insane, like I said earlier, and some can combo into your grenade. For example, you have sun braces on. This just becomes a grenade fest. You literally get one melee, and you have like 5 grenades in one corridor. But that's more of an exotic and an ability kind of connecting. 3, while I'm an idiot that dies so many times, use empowering rifts if you really want to. They're just 3.5. Don't be afraid to use your rifts, as you should have high recovery, which for Warlock is the stat for ability cooldowns, and it could save you from a pretty tough situation. 4, if you're playing in a raid that is not Vow of Disciple, then you should be bringing Well of Radiance. Number 5, use Burst Glide. Definitely the best glide out of the 3, and the movement abilities like Icarus Dash or an Eager Edge Sword to start going 500 miles per hour if once you master moving in Destiny 2, using stuff like Eager Edge skating and different movement techniques as a Warlock, you'll just become goated with the sauce. Like, I haven't become good with that stuff. That's because I don't speedrun this game. Like, I don't talk about these movement techniques in this video, and I can't do them as I suck, but there are tons of guides out there. Just tons of them. Also, number 6, don't die. No context, don't die. That's my bonus tip. Just don't die. Tips out of the way. Just make sure to have recovery as your main stat. While that is true, I believe while you can go with any stat, I believe these stats are the best for Warlock. First, intellect as supers are important, as they're used to do big damage or make the team not die. Well, with Radiance, of course. But also, discipline is great discipline's pretty good, as you should be lobbing grenades everywhere. Strength is not a bad choice for a stat to have a lot in. Resilience may be good to not die as fast, but as you'll have recovery, this may be a stat you can have a fine amount in, but there are better stats to spec in. To get stats, you can put mods on and add fragments that add stats. To get high stat armor, your best choice is to do raids, and you can also decrypt high stat seasonal armor from Season of the Haunted and Risen Ingrams. Now then, you'll deal with RNG. Now keep it on with armor exotics are important. I'll give you 1 per subclass. Some braces are good for solar. Arc has Crown of Tempest. Void has Enzoric Sin. Stasis, you got the Osmiomancy gauntlets. I do suggest when choosing the exotics, right click on them to look at what the exotic per says. Fully, as you see, like when you hover over it, you get like a brief version of it. Those 4 exotics are just like 4 out of 20 plus exotics that you can do. So have fun. To add on, some exotics will be better than the others, and you should find what you like. So to summarize this part, intellect, discipline, and recovery should be your go-to Warlock stat. High stat armor come from Umbrals, raid /dungeons, and read what exotics do to see if you like. And one last thing, try to combo your aspects with other parts of your build. That was a lot of information starting from what each Warlock subclass does to how to build your Warlock in Destiny 2, the Witch Queen. Hopefully this video is helpful, and you'll use this Warlock knowledge the next time you play Warlock. Also hit that like and subscribe button to support this channel and see more videos like this. Anyways, I gotta go. Bye.